Good evening. How are you?
Evening.
Uh,
I'm fine, thank you.
so there's so many things have come up. We'll just start with what we were going to talk about, which was the whistling, and then we'll go from there because I can't stay on topic. Um, so
Good.
yeah, the new harassment from the government, sexual harassment, includes staring and whistling, which I don't think it's a generational thing because I did a poll on Twitter and I didn't get. I think there was a couple of people out of the over 1,000 people who responded that said yes, there should be something done, but most people thought it was ludicrous that it would be up to 2 years in jail for whistling as somebody walked past or staring, which, to be fair, could be I've got something in my eye, I've got autism. There's so many reasons why somebody could be staring. And I think there's a bias in that it's only classed as harassment if it's unwanted attention. So say I was walking down the street and somebody whistled, I turned around, I thought, oh, they're quite nice looking. I may not feel aggrieved. However, if I turned around and thought it was like, ooh, some creepy dude, then I might decide, oh, that's not acceptable. I mean, I wouldn't care either way, but I think that's kind of it's a very shallow base to form a criminal prosecution on.
Yeah, it's a Trojan horse, isn't it? If you don't like someone for whatever reason, from your neighbourhood, probably a person that you sort of know, don't like him. Let's say it's going to be him, perhaps a trans person, but let's say him. You can just say, well, he was staring at me. And then he'll say, no, I wasn't. I was just looking, or I wasn't even looking. I don't know her. But if someone's got it in for you for whatever reason, their boyfriend doesn't like you, that kind of thing, it's so easy to weaponize. And it's the police are going to hate this one. I've come to a bit of a conclusion recently where the police hate all this new stuff. They're having to roll it out because of activist pressure groups, government saying, yes, we're doing something about staring. And then the police are going to go, we can't fucking enforce this. I promised myself I wouldn't swear on your show this week. Yeah. They can't enforce it, and they're not going to. And we're going to look back on this in a couple of years and go, how many of those were there then? It's not as sort of serious as upskirting and downblousing, which are more intrusive for sure and more intentional, I presume. But it's just another thing about eroding the intimacy possible between people. There'll be lots of couples out there who started with a stare, with a willful, with all kinds of human contact, because it happens in so many different ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think as well, it just seems a bit virtue signally when you've got major department stores like Marks and Spencer's, Primark, and other ones where, because of the gender, sex / they don't know what's what because they clearly didn't do biology at school. You can say that you're a female and go into the female changing room areas, and in Primark it's a curtain that doesn't touch the floor. And there's been several cases of people being filmed by, men, because they've got easy access in that situation. So we've got this situation where we've made some easy access available for people, yet they're trying to introduce something new that's not really going to tackle anything at all. It feels like it's just putting a sticking plaster on a femoral artery bleed. it just feels a little bit superficial, pointless, not worth the paper it's wasting time to write. And we're not really addressing the serious crimes that actually are crimes, because somebody whistling at me, I genuinely don't class that as a crime. I can't in any conscience see how it's criminal behaviour. It's like this whole hate speech. There's no such thing as hate speech. You can say hateful things, but who's determining what's hate speech. So somebody has to write a list of these are the things, but what if I don't agree? I might just be whistling to myself, and then somebody could take offence. It's how do you know you're whistling at a person or staring? Or I just think it's a pointless gesture to who I'm not entirely sure. Feminist groups of
it's unfortunate, isn't it? Because I can't think of kind of who else is going to be pushing it, and the neurotic is the only term I can find for them. And also, as Claire Best would kind of point out to us in her absence here, is that it's about money, and these people are being paid to lobby, and they're going to lobby like Billio until there's nothing to lobby against, which will be never. So and they're not in the front on this. They're not winning any war, and there'll be some sort of police chief after Mr. Cowley, or Mr. Cowley, someone coming in and saying, we can't police this stuff, it's ridiculous. And they'll be right. And perhaps it'll be a woman who comes and declares that, because culture now, since sort of 2020 was the apex of woke, I think we're actually better in the sense of there's much more speaking about it and lots more kind of protest about what that was during COVID and everyone going bonkers. Now there's a lot more people saying, let's stop being bonkers, like me and you, and other podcasts, and on the TV getting more and more. And so on the other side of it, but still they'll pass this stuff because the Radfems haven't gone away. They're still furious. I'm still having arguments with them this afternoon, but by accident, not by me being horrible, just by me being reasonable, and they don't like you being reasonable, so they block you, which is a very strange state of affairs for someone like me who doesn't actually like conflict very much. I like discussion. But they're not having that. Mr. Jordan Peterson's been kind of closed down. Well, he's been closed down and reopened again and forever. But he's been told he has to learn how to use social media again or something. This 60-year-old public intellectual, the most famous the world over, needs to use his Twitter more responsibly. So, and he's been taken, he's been told to do that by Canada, which is against the law. And Elon Musk is up in arms about it, which is good news. And everybody is. We've got this massive, bizarre culture war going on where everyone's saying, no, elites, we're not doing that. And the elites don't like it, do they? But they kind of tumble on anyway, and they introduce laws like this. But I don't think the steering law's actually been brought in yet, has it? I mean, it's just a plan.
Yeah, well, I think it's been written, but it's not been brought in yet.
Right. So let's see if there's any interesting debates in Houses of Parliament. We'll share it on Twitter and then have to abide by this terrible new law. But I don't think it will go very far, to be quite honest.
The other thing I find very confusing within the Radfem camp is you've got the Radfem camp who are pro biology, sex not gender, that are still on the we want this protection of women, which obviously they do, but not to the level that they seem to think we're in danger. Then you've also got the other Radfems who are pro trans. So, our favourite barrister is a Radfem.
Who's that? Who are we talking about, Hedgen?
Dr. Charlotte Proudman.
Right.
Yeah.
Charlotte Proudman.
Who hates men unless they're trans and identify as a woman, and then they're fine. Which I find the most bizarre conflict of her own ideology then. So all men are dangerous unless they're in a dress. Okay, I mean, none of her stances make much sense, but that one's just a ludicrous one as far as I'm concerned. So you've got this sort of divide amongst them, I think, which is why I like Keller Jace. I don't like myself, not a feminist, just a woman, not just a woman, but just women who are sticking up for the rights of women, children, and men as separate entities that can live together safely, and don't prescribe to the narrative that they've been following for. I mean, I don't think they know where they're going. I think that's why there's such a division within feminists. There's lots of people who call themselves a feminist, but they don't agree what that is, and they all have different beliefs. And some things I will agree with them on, like the sex not gender, and other things think, like that one on Twitter today is like, no, all men are rapey. Like, no, they're not, dear. And I just think, how have you got to this point in life that they've lost the plot? They literally have lost the plot. The whole feminist movement's lost the plot, and it's just become broken off into little sects of cults, if you will. And they don't all agree on a lot of topics, whereas women that just stand up for normality, saneness, common sense, are kind of backing off a little bit, I think, from that whole. It's a university middle class. We are superior. We will tell you what you need to be better women, to have a better life. They don't actually know anything about just normal life, being married and babies and all the rest of it. I don't think a lot of them have prescribed to that lifestyle.
Well,
they don't have a clue.
They've possibly got their own sort of version of that, but it's so different from how it looks to you and me, where there's a compliant situation at home where everybody agrees on the same kind of woke things. And oh, absolutely, darling, eat your muesli. For example, there muesli, it could be anything, but but there's no actual human debate about what's going on. There has to be an agreed consensus in the house, otherwise they'll divorce, and they can't risk that. I think that kind of thing happens with households all over the place at the moment. And you basically have to keep them happy. And on the whole, if there's a dysfunction in a heteronormative couple, is that right? Is that heteronormative?
The majority of the world, yeah.
Well, apparently, in that sort of a couple, you kind of keep the guy happy just in case he's a nutter, and we don't want him to be a nutter because things go wrong in a different way from usually where we keep her happy, because that's the way to keep the equilibrium of the house happy, because you don't want tears and kind of emotional trauma all over the place. But to put things into these very normal boxes where they tend to be, is for some reason controversial now, because we're not allowed to have stereotypes of behavior, which is they're stereotypes because they're true, and as I think what connects you and I is that we quite like the stereotypes that are true because there's a reason that they exist in that way. Not quite sure what I'm talking about now, but yeah.
Yeah, well, just to link the stereotype with Jordan Peterson being theoretically threatened to be struck off.
It's not theoretic. He's been called. He's been called to do the training.
But he's taking them to court, isn't he?
Oh.
So I hope he's successful in that, because Canada's kind of lost the plot a bit in terms of wokery. Somebody posted a meme or something with him and Andrew Tate on the one side, and this guy down at the pub in the other, saying you should go ask the guy at the pub, not these two incel kings or something. And I said, I'm not quite sure what you see that's similar between Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, other than they're both men. But one of the things that Jordan Peterson, because this is what I said, Jordan Peterson values his family, his wife and his family above all else. I said, so if you don't understand that about him, you really don't understand him at all. Whereas Andrew
It's an
Tate,
inconvenient truth, isn't it? They don't like that part of it.
no, whereas Andrew Tate is not all about the married life at all. And I think that may be to do with his mum and dad split up, and then his mum moved away from his dad, and he was brought up by a single mum, and who knows. I'm not going to analyse why Andrew Tate is the way he is. But Jordan Peterson is all about family. And I think that's where the Rad Femme camp kind of departed from women, and the fact that they sort of look down the nose at any woman who thinks that motherhood is the best thing since sliced bread, which, bringing up the next generation, I can't really see that there's anything more important, because if you don't bring up the next generation, what's the point in trying Greta saying how dare you and let's save the planet when there's just a bunch of incompetent fairies running around?
It's the one thing that we know we are supposed to do, is to reproduce. We have this internal function that we're not particularly in control of, and it's beautiful and it's good. Like the things we talk about, they're all beautiful and good and being stopped, and it's a threat to certain people's ideas about how you and I should be, and it's a nonsense, And when it comes to Mr. Peterson, again, he's about the family indeed, but his actual core philosophy is the individual. So, but like the individual within the family, you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. And that has been utterly lost. But he's absolutely right on that. And I'm an individualist in that sense, not an economic individualist. We discussed last week, I think. Individual first, then you can help others. If you don't, you're just virtue signaling, and you're just going to do kind of more harm, because you'll be expecting the love back. Don't expect love. Nothing can go wrong. It'll come, but you just don't expect anything. Actually, is how I rock, to be honest.
I think the main thing that people misunderstand about him is when he talks to people, he uses that analogy like clean your room, because it's something you can control. It's kind of just a metaphor for trying to sort out your life, because one of his pieces of advice to men who complain about women or not be able to find a woman or anything else is, well, you want to find somebody who's engaging, who'll challenge you a bit. There's no point sort of trying to find somebody who isn't going to challenge you a bit, because you're going to spend your life with them. So what would be the point? It should be a mutual respect thing. So it's the idea that he's some sort of man that's disrespectful or does, is pro men and anti women. It's just ridiculous. I'm not quite sure where that notion comes from at all. I mean, people have misinterpreted lots of his quotes and other things, but he's family and respect within family. That's it.
He's the anti-narrative. He doesn't do the group narrative of the liberal democratic. I don't like to use the word liberal, because I'm a liberal. I consider myself a liberal, and but we're encouraged to think that's somehow wrong. But he doesn't do that part of the liberality, and so it's like, how dare you? How dare you be that popular and exist? The BBC, etc., saying, when I say BBC, I mean everything that trickles down from it. But the Channel 4 News was the best interview, where he just did kind of Kathy Newman, who I like very much, but he embarrassed her, I suppose, in that journalistic sense. But he
really, because
when you're always expecting to be in the right in that smug kind of way that they do, not just her, but everybody on Channel 4 News does, it's like, how dare you come on our show and speak actually like that? And that's why they wouldn't have the characters that we've started to enjoy to watch. And not that, Mr. Lawrence Fox, just imagine him going on to 4 and actually speaking his mind. He can get a bit too snarky sometimes, a bit too much kind of mocking. I don't like that style of things, but he's speaking from his heart, and with Jordan Peterson, Lawrence Fox, and Calvin Robinson, they're all very compelling guys, because they're speaking from their heart. But the thing that connects them is this kind of Christian faith. And I'm a cultural Christian. I'm not a science. I can't do the science of faith. I don't have that faith, and I don't believe in hell and that sort of thing. But I appreciate the fact that they do, and that they're sticking to it, despite in the media you basically get mocked for having a faith, for being Christian. And this country is Indigenous Christian. It's got lots of roots in that. Shouldn't be ashamed of it. And I think it's a good thing to support, and for it to maintain that, because it's actually quite kind of closely connected to being secular, which I am. These things aren't actually very different. If you catch an atheist over here and a Church of England guy here, there's not much space between them except for a bunch of bit of science and evolution. That's the reality of that. They hate it when you say that. Don't repeat it. But it's that's the case with them. It's very different with the Middle East, more Eastern thing, which is the same God, but an entirely different perspective on things, all about authority and order, which Christianity doesn't actually do very well, because Christ was a rebel.
Well, Catholicism is a form of Christianity. They're very good at that.
The biggest one. Yeah, indeed. But they still understand the core that he was a rebel. They just have a bunch of stuff around it. I'm not going to get too deep into the theology, or I'm going to be embarrassed by somebody commenting on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, faith is personal to the people that follow a faith. I do find it odd, though, that people openly mock Christianity in England, where they wouldn't mock other religions.
It can handle it, that's why.
Yeah, but I do take issue with some of the moves of the church to sort of bend their religion. Because we've noticed the new non-binary reverend who's appeared, called Bingo, who's appeared in the Church of England. I'm not really sure how that falls under the faith. I don't know it enough.
Well,
just seems.
I mean, he has been, he, she, he, they have been receiving a massive bollocking on social media this week for, right. Let's get, the thing is that person is very, very nice. You can see that, and speaks very, very well, and is clearly very religious. So we have all those issues with Bingo. I wonder what the original name was. Why don't you stick with the original name rather than landing yourself as a hostage to fortune with a name like that, for Christ's sake? Anyway, sorry, Christ, yeah. Anyway, there's Bingo. It's a nice person, but the culture at the moment cannot handle what's going on, because it's like, what, this too? Please. But and it's almost like stepping a bit further and a bit further in order to get people riled. And I mean, the constituency, that's not the word, is it? Of his church.
The church, yeah.
Isn't going to like it very much. I mean, God knows. Well, I guess we should go and have a seat at the back and see how it goes that night. Perhaps there'll be a lot of popularity for it. Back to the human, though. The human is important, and the human seems like a very pleasant person. However, the theology, which Calvin's talking about with a massive mockery, I mean, jury's out.
It kind of depends why you go to church and what it's all for. Whether that's, I think it's more about if it's a 2,000+ year old text that people are following to some description. I understand with all religions, they're that old or older, and they were written of a time back then, and they may need some adapting, but it's how much are you willing to adapt your faith. I'm sure they are, but I think I read something about, did a bit of research. They were brought up in a very strictly religious household where being gay was a sin. And then they moved from Yorkshire to Lancashire and are now ordained in the church. And if that's what makes them happy, that's fine. I just think with the Church of England links with Stonewall still, and the whole transgender issues with mermaids and all of that stuff. I mean, the church haven't really properly recovered from the, child abuse scandals and other things. The church as a whole big thing, not specific churches. It kind of feels a little bit like,
yeah.
And another doorway has opened where they've closed one. To a lot of people.
We're just going to ask you, Jenna. I don't suppose you give me a kind of a potted history of Stonewall, just because I'm not entirely sure about it. Well, I am, but
Yeah.
just to refresh me on it.
So the Stonewall riots originally, obviously in America, started outside a nightclub that was a gay club. And then the following year, they did a march, which the following year became Pride, Gay Pride. It was Gay Pride. And then Stonewall set up as an organisation to fight for gay rights, which they did marvellously and managed to get it legalised. If you think about some of the laws that have only been changed in our recent history, it's a little bit ludicrous, but legalised, got gay marriage the same age. I remember when the age was reduced, so that it's 16 for if you're gay and 16 if you're straight, both ways. That was in my lifetime. Gay marriage is in my lifetime. And they sort of achieved everything they could for gay rights, which you would think, yay.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you've got to keep the money coming in, so you have to find another lobbyist thing movement.
So do you think it's that though? Do you think it's that, or do you actually really think that they are just into absolute rights for absolutely everybody?
No, I think
Because there are going to be people like that, aren't there?
Yeah. No, it's no, because what they've been putting out and sort of signing companies up to and schools and other things over the last decade is this: how do you rank on the Stonewall rankings in terms of an equality employer, and it affects all sorts of funding that you might get and all sorts of things to bring in the non-binary, trans, etc. agenda. But they state on the website now that being gay is a choice. Now, gay people fought for years for that not to be true. You were born gay. It's not a choice. And now it apparently is a choice. And they're touting that you're born in the wrong body. That's why you need to trans. So, and if you say that you're same-sex attracted, which is gay, and that's apparently transphobic. So if
I don't care about the tags anymore. I don't care about the labels. They've become so meaningless.
Well,
go on.
It doesn't actually mean that at all, but that's
not at that stage.
So you've got lesbians and gay men who fully supported Stonewall for probably most of their lifetimes and are thankful and grateful for all of the activism that they did to get them equal rights to heterosexual people. But now they've set up their own organisation, the LGBT Alliance, because Stonewall is not pro-gay anymore. It's pro-TQI plus, whatever. And the fact that they keep touting the word queer, which for a lot of people who are gay of our age or older, that was a slur that was used while they were getting the head kicked in. It's not something they want to reappropriate.
No.
Just please don't prescribe it to me. I'm I'm talking on behalf of people that I actually talk to. I'm not just talking out of my backside.
No, of course.
So there's become a massive division, and a lot of people's like the idea that there's this LGBTQI plus community to a lot of people who would technically be part of it is just a nonsense. They're either gay or they're lesbian or they're bi, and they have absolutely nothing in common with some dude that dresses as a baby and calls himself a trans whatever, and they don't want to be associated with that. They spent years trying to get away from the narrative that they had anything to do with paedophilia or children or anything like that, because that was a narrative that was spread around about people who were gay for years, and they've kind of had equality and everyone was fine, pretty much. You always have extremists. And then now it's all like, I mean, drag queen is a tiny, minuscule percentage of people who are gay, and not all of them are gay, representing the gay community. It's not representative of the gay community. You can walk past 20 men in the street and 10 of them could be gay and you won't bat an eyelid. So it's, it's caused division, and a lot of them don't want a community. They just want to live their lives. Their sexuality isn't who they are. Same as mine and yours isn't. We don't parade around with our sexuality as this is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm a.
That's the curse of being heteronormative, though. You know, it's like no one ever feels my pain. But
we had to develop a personality because we didn't have pronouns. Or
that's the problem. It's the compulsion of this stuff is the thing that gets people like me riled. You know, people who into English language, because they can. You know, what you were just talking about is the fact that they're getting rid of all the boundaries between people. Okay, interesting, fine, let's be everything and be anything. But when you compel other people to see you that way and to use the terminology to reflect that, it's unfair, because you are then imposing your sort of minority, a very unusual wish on others, and trying to doctor English when it's got its own life. You know, you can't really push the English language. It needs to change of its own volition. It's like that kind of an organism. And if you try, it's going to be doomed to fail, because we're still in the period of a fashion. So I'm afraid I think it's a fashion. And if you change things depending on that fashion, it's just going to revert back to snap back to whatever the natural law tends to say. And you know, I don't want to push the idea of the natural law, but it's a thing again that you can trust. It's a thing that actually exists, that we can, God willing, have kids in the normal way, and to go back to nature and call it he and a she is not a fascistic thing, and to pretend that it is a misunderstanding of progress. And that's why lots of intelligent people are saying these things aren't progress, and the situations that we're living through aren't progress. And you know, people like, you know, liberal lefties or liberal righties, whatever the fuck we are these days. And it's yeah,
I think
blah blah blah.
I have more sympathy for young people who are just going along with the thing that's current, because teenagers do that. And I think a lot of teenagers feel pressured to say that they're like non-binary, or you know, it's not cool to be not have some weird identity these days. I mean, it's the ones that actually go through with some medical transition, end up sterilized, and the people behind it all, and the nefarious darkness when you start digging deeper and deeper into what's really behind it all, that's shocking and horrifying. And it may seem like, well, we're just dressing up, it's just fun, to some young people that don't know about the world yet. But those that are going to end up childless, potentially. There was a tweet today from a Childline counsellor who had advised a child who'd been in touch that was identifying as trans, that they must have used the term about 6 times, your true gender, and that they were born in the wrong body, etc., which is Stonewall language. And then they advised them that they could adopt or use a surrogate mother if they wanted a family, which is the whole narrative of, you know, separating family units, children being commodities, all linked in with the whole WEF and big tech companies who are keen on us being more reliant on medication, big pharma and technology, dependent would be the word, on them to reproduce, to live, to function. And obviously if we break down the nuclear family as is, that's easier for them to do. Makes them lots of money. So I'm sort of championing the 1950s lifestyle with 2010 legislation. That's when the Equality Act came out.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
1950s lifestyle with 2010s legislation.
Yeah, I don't think we should go backwards in terms of husbands are being allowed to beat the wives and being shamed if they weren't beating the wives because the wives had shown them up in the street. I don't think we need to go back quite that far.
I don't think there's ever been a law, but okay.
Oh, it was originally. It
was
yes.
Well, like in the 1600s or something.
Well, even after that,
Okay.
yeah. If your wife was embarrassing you and you hadn't beaten her sufficiently, you had to defend yourself in a court why you'd not got her in check.
Right. Wow.
We've moved on from that.
Not doing the honourable thing. Yes, we have indeed moved on from that.
So we have made progress. But I think people have been a bit blind in their search for going forward. They're not really sure what they were going forward to or for what reason, without really thinking it through. I mean, was it David Bowie when the internet first came out that said something about we've no idea how much of an impact it'll have? I can't remember. There's a speech.
Yeah, it was him, yeah.
Yeah, very profound statement that people thought it was being a bit...
come off it. It's only a computer. Yeah. That's right.
He wasn't wrong.
The monopolies do not have a monopoly. Maybe on programs.
What you like about what you like about it is the fact that anyone can say anything or do anything.
From my stand, from where I am, because of by virtue of the fact that I am a pop singer and writer, I really embrace the idea that there's a new demystification process going on between the artist and the audience. I think when you look back at, say, this last decade, there hasn't really been one single entity, artist or group, that have personified or become the brand name for the 90s. It was starting to fade a little in the 80s, and in the 70s there were still definite artists, in the 60s there were the Beatles and the Hendrix, and in the 50s there was Presley. Now it's subgroups and genres. It's hip-hop, it's girl power. It's a communal kind of thing. It's about the community. It's becoming more and more about the audience, because the point of having somebody who led the forces has disappeared because the vocabulary of rock is too well known. It's a currency that is not it's not devoid of meaning anymore, but it's certainly only a conveyor of information now. It's not a conveyor of rebellion. And the internet has taken on that, as I say. And so I find that a terribly exciting area. So from my standpoint, being an artist, I like to see what the new construction is between artist and audience. There is a breakdown. There's a personified, I think, by the rave culture of the last few years, where the audience is at least as important as whoever is playing at the rave. It's almost like the artist is to accompany the audience and what the audience are doing. And that feeling is very much permeating music and permeating the internet.
But what is it specifically about the internet? I mean, anybody can say anything. And it all adds up to what? I mean, it seems to me there's nothing cohesive about it in the way that there was something cohesive about the youth revolution in music.
Oh, but absolutely. And because I think that we, at the time, up until at least the mid-70s, really felt that we were still living under in the guise of a single and absolute created society, where there were known truths and known lies, and there was no kind of duplicity or pluralism about the things that we believed in. That started to break down rapidly in the 70s, and the idea of a duality in the way that we live. There are always 2, 3, 4, 5 sides to every question. That the singularity disappeared. And that, I believe, has produced such a medium as the internet, which absolutely establishes and shows us that we are living in total fragmentation.
You don't think that some of the claims being made for it are hugely exaggerated? I mean, when the telephone was invented, people made amazing claims.
I know the president,
for example.
The president at the time when it was first invented, he was outrageous. He said he foresaw the day in the future when every town in America would have a telephone. Now how dare he claim like that? Absolute bullshit. No, you see, I don't
But in the end-
agree. I don't agree. I think the internet. I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No. No, it's an alien life form.
What do you think? I mean, when you think then about the
Is
future
there
of
life
it-
on Mars? Yes, it's just landed here.
But it's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about. But it's happening in every form. It's happening in visual art. The breakthroughs at the early part of the century with people like Duchamp, who were so prescient in what they were doing and putting down. The idea that the piece of work is not finished until the audience come to it and add their own interpretation, and what the piece of art is about is the grey space in the middle. That grey space in the middle is what the 21st century is going to be about.
No, he wasn't. He understood what happens with tech and all these tech giants, these tech bosses, Zuckerberg, Musk, Bezos, even they get what can happen. And if you want to go forward, which is it's a scientifically good thing to do. It's good to progress, and then you need the state to say there are certain things you can't do. But the state is just so bamboozled by it all, impressed. And there's Silicon Valley is so rich and so glamorous, and it's all quite sort of cool that it gets the encouragement, you know. And we're still quite impressed by it all, because parts of the tech are wonderful, aren't they? The cures they come up for things, and when it comes to the medicalization of us, there are certain things that are brilliant and wonderful. But when you come to the medicalization of how you feel, look at my sticky out ears. And if I wanted them put back a bit, I can hear a lot better now. But I'm not actually me anymore. The same version. Quite alarming, isn't it? That's me. And but as a 15-year-old, I'd have been please could I have them pinned back? Be great. Or with the stammer, there are certain things, certain pills you can take which will ameliorate the effects. And just sort of routes I haven't gone down, because I don't like to fuck with the core too much. Not that other people shouldn't. Good for them. But it's not for me.
Well, I'm not saying good for them.
No.
My view of plastic surgery, and a lot of it was developed in the Second World War for men who were severely disfigured. To sort of get some sort of normalcy of look back into the, and I think anyone who was, either born with a cleft lip or so it's reconstructive or to repair an injury. I think that's a marvelous invention but this whole notion of making your bum 2 times bigger, making your boobs 5 times bigger, injecting things in your cheeks so that you look like some alien, let's all look exactly the same, and then we'll add 10 filters onto the phone so we don't look anything like we do in real life. Is all a little bit odd. I've always had an issue with child pageants, when 4-year-olds have got a full face of makeup on and singing "Hey Daddy," and I'm like, ugh. It's just it's something. I'm going to call it maternal instincts. I can't think of it's just an instinct. Like no. And I feel the same about little children with drag queens. It's not a drag queen thing or a gay thing just this is age appropriateness. Boundaries are there for reasons, and so it's not my feelings on things are not a new thing because of wokeness. It's just become more important to talk about them now because they're becoming too much. Everything's too much. I mean, in the UK, we've never really jumped on the American pageant bandwagon the same.
No.
thankfully. But we have jumped on all, the rest of this gender woohoo nonsense they're saying, and it's got very dark links to nefarious people and nefarious theologies and people with a lot of money who quite want boundaries eroded. So I'm not down for that.
No, indeed. I mean, just in case we kind of go sort of down and down into, isn't it all awful? I mean, I'm a experimental person, an artist who likes to do different things in life and to see different things and to break down sort of boundaries in terms of art and creativity and thinking, because the solutions I kind of come up with are to put two things together to get a third, alternative thinking and sort of lateral, that kind of thing. And there's lots of positive things that can be done, but to redefine everything around everybody else is the absence of consensus, and we're obsessed with consent, right? These days, but apparently not to the consent of the majority. And the academic elites that we talk about have understood that they don't really need to change the law to get what they want done, because that's a hell of a hill to climb. So they kind of chip away a little bit of that, but it's much more effective to get your people into the top to send memos of how the organization will behave and to spread in a viral way. And it starts in the academy, and then that this student kind of graduates and goes out to be a journalist, becomes an editor, and then they're in charge of the policy of that paper, gradually, and in the corporate and education too. And before you know it, you're surrounded by it. And you say about the Stonewall, of course, which is always been a bit niche to me. We've always supported it in terms of liberation, but as you say, it's rather changed. And as we keep hearing, I was in Istanbul when it changed. So, but it's like, I'm a progressive guy who likes change and to break down the borders. That's what I'm trying to say. But this isn't that. It's not progress anymore, but they're calling it progress. And that's not being a fuddy-duddy, because I know for a fact that it was interesting. A couple of days ago, I was listening to a documentary, Mr. Andrew Doyle, who's a hero of mine, and he was saying that the people that he speaks to, his age group, sort of younger, in their 20s and 30s, they are more traditional in the way that we're talking about than we give them any credit for. They're not all blue head going crazy people. They're trying to wrestle. A lot of the people he's speaking to are like that. It's actually the people of our age and a bit older who are saying, come on, world, let's go brave. And apparently that's the dynamic. It's not about age groups, basically, is what he's trying to say. All the different age groups have these different parts, but the majority of them is all about being natural, but they have tolerance for the unnatural or the super progressive, whatever we're protesting against here. Because we are starting to protest, aren't we? Let's face it. I don't like that, but I'm protesting against the language. You're protesting against the natural function, I think. And it's like
asserting myself.
yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
I think what it is there's the liberal movement from the 60s and 70s kind of thing. The traditional liberal social way of being was trying to improve things for every man, whether that happened or not, whether there's a falsehood of whether that happened or not, or whether it really did. It was to improve things for the everyday person. And then, but that becomes how you are and how you brought your children up, to be liberal, tolerant, accept things. People are different, accept this. And so people are tolerant and don't want to say things that might be upsetting. And that's all lovely and nice and kind and smashing. But when you get to a point where you have people now, and there are like the Stop Oil protesters and that kind of activism, don't see art, like, because you're very into the artistic thing. I like art, but I like my own, prefer music.
I like what I like. Yeah, I know.
It's a form of art. Music is a form of art. I'd much rather mess around with music than paints, because I get distracted, that I'm frustrated that it doesn't I'm too much of a perfectionist. I want it to look how it is in my head. But the fact that they were sticking themselves to, you know, priceless artworks as if it was just some nothing, without really
just a way to get attention, just attention, as they said. You know,
but
that's all they want.
But not really understanding or appreciating what came before them. It's just canvas and paint rather than history or the era that it came from. Or people seem to have like anything that's old, like historical, is bad.
Yeah.
There's no nuance of there was good things in the past. It's like they're trying to erase everything that happened before they got to here, because it was all bad. Like, well, it can't have been all bad, otherwise you wouldn't have got to where you are now. So
that's right. And this isn't the kind of first time this has happened. Of course, in the 20s, had the futurists in Italy who preceded the fascist party of Mussolini by being sort of year zero, and I think that's where the year zero thing originated. Everything before is irrelevant. We're only going to look to the future, where it's going to be bright, strong, and fast. And this kind of zip thinking started then. And then in the 70s, with punk, they did the same thing with music. Like, get rid of Genesis. We're doing the Sex Pistols, and if you don't like it, you can F off. And so, and that spirit, of course, is still around with our grandfathers, not our grandfathers, but people just a little bit older than me. I've got lots of pals who are proper punks, and they still have that ethos, and the ethos is very solid. I've got a lot of that in my spirit, my creativity. You know, do what you want to do and get on with it. But even those old punks have now got into history, they're into classic rock and things, because as you get older, you value it. You almost can't help it. If you've been alive on the earth, you can't help but start to appreciate the old stuff, despite however much of a revolutionary you are. You know, and it's a beautiful thing about getting older. But I'm sure the punks would say, "Oh, my 18-year-old self wouldn't like me anymore." Well, no, they might not, but you're actually doing the right thing, because being human means keeping all these things going. And so Tony Blair was attempting to bring all that together, to be zip forward and to keep the traditionalism. And what he ended up doing was putting too much in this weird pot of tolerance, which we are now feeling the after effects of. You know, he doesn't get attacked half as much as it's not just about the Iraq War that Mr. Blair is. You know, he's a charming old sod, and he's still going, and long life. You know, we're all British, so keep alive, Mr. Blair. But the damage he's done culturally is staggering, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of, he's doing the year zero without telling us, and if you do this year zero thing without telling your population you're doing it, then it's something of an act of wickedness, isn't it?
Yes. He doesn't get anywhere near the vitriol Margaret Thatcher got for stealing our milk.
No, right.
Whenever someone says Tony Blair, I just do this all the time, because that's how he did his speeches. Everything was a so that's all that comes to mind.
Yes.
Tony Blair.
It's all about the presentation and the actual substance is.
I mean, years ago, I did a communication course, and if you want people to listen, your hands are here because it's near your ears and it's psychological. You want them to dream, you're up here, and you want them to really feel it.
Fucking bollocks! I hate all that shit. Oh, it drives me nuts. But of course, you're right.
How to deliver a speech to get the audience. It's just like
neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah.
80s power grabs.
Do better, Jen. Be kind and do better. Are you learning your lessons? And if we get to Dr. Schola, Dr. Schola, that's enough of a name, isn't it? It's like this whole sort of the rhetoric of like, I just don't think you understand, do you? I think you need to read up on this subject, Jen. You need to read up on being a mother and you know, being a woman. Yeah, I don't think you know about being a woman, do you?
No.
If you don't, read this book.
Yeah.
Etc.
43 years of being one. It's apparently not enough.
Yeah, well, just to bring Dr. Schola into the room there, you know,
the educated who feel like they're on some sort of pedestal of superiority, I've always had an adverse reaction to, and she's one of those, but she's quite hateful and vitriolic in her condescension.
Good line. Hateful and vitriolic in her condescension. That sums up the charming Dr. Scholler
I
with
mean,
her blocked up nose.
if I had a time machine, I would go get Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and get them to sit and listen to one of her speeches, and they'd just be rolling on the floor laughing, going, what are you doing? Because absolutely everything she says is pro segregation. Let's not live harmoniously together. It's so bizarre, and it's like a very Americanized view of Black history, which British Black history and American Black history are nothing like. Absolute, complete polar opposites.
That's a really important point. It's a really important point you're making, and it's difficult for us to be taken sort of seriously talking about it. But you're completely right to make it. You know, I think if we had a Black friend here, and I think I said to you in the last one, it's like how much the Black friends that I have, and I'm not going to say people of color, all the rest of it, Black friends, do not support any of this stuff. They find it divisive.
Yeah.
And I feel really sorry for them because, you know, there's people like you and I, you know, of course, there I am using they and all the rest of it. The problem is living in Britain gets by not hammering on about things. We've all got our issues, we don't hammer on about them, and we carry on. And that is the core of, if there's a British value, that's the one for me. Yeah, keep calm, whatever. It's on cups and it makes sense. You just don't. The way to be properly integrated and to keep a sense of humor and to keep rolling on is to not talk about the divisions all the time. And critical theory now, gender and race, I'm a bit more cross with the gender one, but with you know, also the race one is a bit more sort of, why are you so angry? It's a bit, you know, these things didn't happen to you. And if you have a problem now about the past, then deal with yourself and then deal with the problem. But Dr. Scholler just wants too much attention. If she didn't want that much attention, I would be a bit more interested in her argument. But because the desire for attention is so clear and so sort of, listen to me, and it's the same thing with Meghan Markle, who no one considered was Black before she advertised herself as it. And, you know, we talked about to Lenny Henry last week, didn't we? And we're going to come across as, but it's... We talk about it too much, don't we, basically?
No, because I tweeted about Floella Benjamin this week.
Floella Benjamin.
Floella Benjamin has...
Play school.
Yeah, she was... I grew up with Floella Benjamin on the telly and thought, what a joyful woman. And
what's she done now? What's she done?
Just amazing. She always has been. But she spent her whole life. She took a step back from acting and other things, but doing stuff for charity. She's written books. I think she's a damehood. She's a member of the House of Lords now. I mean, she's 70 something and still, like, you can close your eyes and open your eyes again. It's still like she's on play school.
Looking good on it.
Yeah. And she was involved in the Windrush statue for the 75-year anniversary of that, because she came when she was 10 as part of the Windrush generation. And I just think, why is she not heralded more? Because she is a national treasure to my whole life. She is a role model, and I just think that's, to me, she is the poster girl for British black culture, as far as I'm concerned. It's not Mel B. Can't stand her.
Because despite misgivings about Harry Windsor, is that his surname? Harry Windsor?
Prince Henry of whenever, Sussex, Duke of Sussex.
Right, Harry. So whatever misgivings about him, he has the one thing that I agree with him that he said before in the past was that I don't agree with the business model that killed my mother. He put it in a very when you think about that sentence, you can feel his pain, and because we kind of watching him go behind his mum behind the hearse there, it was moving, and yeah, you don't want to support the business model that you think killed your mother, and Floella Benjamin is not controversial. She's calm and normal and nice. And the business model is about controversy. So they've created one for Harry. He's automatically controversy from the Nazi uniforms up to Meghan. He and his ginger. So it's like controversy comes through the pores. And good for him on that. And that's what the media likes. They don't care about whether something's right or wrong. As I've said, it's just entirely amoral, and it's going to respond. And what you and I do is respond to these cues, and we keep the whole thing going on because it's interesting. And that's the business model of Charlotte Perelman too.
Yeah.
And that's just the media at work. But the things where it becomes much more insidious and kind of creepy is the changes that they make underneath our protests, our assertions. The changes that have been made on the quiet are alarming. But they also do get their kickback, which is, we appear to be kicking back at the moment, don't we?
You have more respect for Harry than I do.
Is it that bad? Is the esteem that low?
I didn't have a lot of obviously when Princess Diana died and he was there, it was sad. Everybody felt for William and Harry, and he was a troubled teen, understandably, but there's at a point now where he put men's lives at risk when he insisted he went to the front line. I won't get into his time in the army, but Prince William is the only member of the royal family to serve in the army, the RAF, and the navy ever. Yet we seem to forget that. He was also part of air ambulance in Anglesey for 3 years, because people seem to forget that he did that. It's like, Harry's this war hero, so we can forgive him. Well, Prince Charles was also in the RAF. Prince Andrew was in the Navy for 20 odd years, and in part of the Falklands War. I respect all vets and armed services, but I don't think it's a get out of jail free card for just trying to destroy the whole nation's culture and identity because you're upset that you don't get to be king.
Oh, okay. So, what do you think? What do you think's actually happening with Harry, sort of, on a deeper level, on a psychological level? Because you got a bit more insight than that. It's not about being king, is it? It's about.
Oh, he is completely jealous of his brother, and always has been. And brothers can be competitive. That's not an unusual scenario. But generally speaking, you're on a level playing field to sort of both be equally successful. And Harry's never going to be that because he's never going to be king. So there's no way he can ever achieve the same as his brother. And that bothers him.
Do you think so?
Massively. You can, massively. Even when you see footage of him when he was little, because William was quite shy, and I think at the time he would have quite happily not been the one that was chosen to be king. And Harry's like, I'll be king. The younger sibling sort of
dynamic.
Dynamic. Princess Diana was amazing and all the rest of it, but she wasn't perfect.
I don't think she was amazing, but okay.
In terms of changing the dynamic between the royals and the public. They weren't sort of away from the public as much as they had been in the past. She changed a lot of things, and
we hated her in our household, Jen. We couldn't
did you?
bear her. She thought she was a terrible celebrity, bunch
Yeah.
of rubbish.
But
Don't speak ill of the dead, of course, except Thatcher.
Yeah.
Or Jimmy Savile. Don't speak ill of the dead except Thatcher, Jimmy Savile, or Jeffrey Epstein. Don't speak ill of the dead except okay.
Well, no one's perfect. Either
No,
way.
no, quite.
I think William got the rougher end of the deal with Diana because she used to cry on him and ask for his advice. He became a parent to her, whereas Harry was still a kid. Whereas William had to grow up faster. And then when she died, I think William was more able to it wasn't easy. I think he was more structured already to deal with that type of emotion, whereas Harry wasn't. And I think Harry's still in that arrested state of development. I don't think he's really fully moved on. Something he said in his documentary, and I've only seen snippets on other people's channels because I'm not watching it, was that, he was swept up by the nation when his mum died. And I can understand how that must feel at the time for him. He felt protected. And I think the fact that the media no longer protect him and the public have mixed opinions on him, he feels like, well, it's not, why have they done this to me? They swept me up after my mum died. Why would they do this? Because we became his other mother, kind of, and he doesn't understand why we wouldn't always just forgive him for all his misgivings. But why would we? Because there's a point where we expect people to grow up. And I think he's deeply troubled.
Oh, that's for sure.
I think he's married someone who's using the fact that he's deeply troubled with her own narcissistic, sociopathic tendencies to gain as much power and notoriety as she can.
And I think they're very much of their time as well, because
yes,
she is very emblematic of people will have been encouraged to use that narcissism by social media and by the fact that she's always been told she's beautiful and the rest of it, and has gone on to get her prince. And now it's like, realised doing it in Britain wasn't going to work out quite as planned, but she tried, as far as she'll see. And then let's go and do it on our terms then, Harry H. So off they go and do it there. And what I don't get upset about them is that the fact that I'm not a royalist. I'm not a massive Republican. I'm just I don't have much of an opinion on it, like Brexit. It's like whatever. So I kind of watch them in a cultural sense, as in they're kind of emblematic about what's going on now. And if I look at Harry, like almost everybody in the public eye, really, except for some journos, I just wanted to say, speak your mind, will you? But I think what his mind really, really is all about is a hatred for the press. So be it. Edward VIII had that too and went off and disappeared, which would, because there is a deal, I think that deal is acknowledged, and I think that deal has some sort of a value, doesn't it? I've only started to realise recently, after coming back from Istanbul, how much the world really does give a shit about the royal family in a way that I don't. So it's like, okay, that's an industry, so let's use that, and it's true, and it does have the wonderful history. But the relationship is, you are there, you have lots of nice things, and we will look at you. And if you don't want to, we don't quite know what to do with you. So Edward VIII, off he went. I got a lot of respect for Edward VIII. I think he's cool as. And then, but with Harry, on your own terms. So that's the new, is I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to be Harry, because he can't stop being Harry. It doesn't matter if he keeps the title or not. I really don't think the world cares about that, and they'll call him Prince Harry anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, the titles, I couldn't care less. I think the fact that all he's done since he stepped back from the royal family is make money on trying to tar the royal family and besmirch the royal family, and this whole I'm a victim, feel sorry for me card, which, if you don't like the situation, I don't think Meghan had any intention of ever staying in Britain, ever, at all. I don't think that was ever in her agenda, and I don't think it was in Harry's, to be honest. I think they
I
always
think she's going to do whatever makes her happy, Jen, wherever that is.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever part of the plan to stay part of the working royals. Which is fine, but go make your money doing something. But all they've done since is complain, moan, try and be a victim.
Everybody can have a hard life depending on their mentality, right? I do believe that. It's definitely not about stuff.
No.
I'd hate to be a royal, but what's happening with them, the way they're emblematic, is that this sort of century, for 20 years now, outside of you and I, who are more, I'm about interior locus, you know. I think you possibly are too, I don't know, but it's about, you speak to yourself about who you are, but they take all their cues from outside. So it appears. So the victimhood stuff is about, you be a victim and you will feel better. That is what they've been taught for 20 years. But I did my developing before that, in the last century, when it wasn't the case. You know, you look after yourself essentially, and you take the rough with the smooth, to trot out more cliches. And that's why, I mean, I don't ever blame almost anybody in the public eye for their being irritating, because they're a product of their culture in general, unless it's their genetics, where they can't help it. And let's not forget, he's a Virgo. Virgos are known for complaining. I don't know about your and with Geminis, which is Will, they're very, very good at keeping a lot of stuff somewhere else. So
well, I'm an Aries.
just to drop that one in there for at the end of your
We're headstrong and born leaders, so I'm just going to go for it.
Cool. That explains a lot.
Yeah.
Taurus here.
I just, it's just, I'm kind of done, bored. Apparently, Will hit him and he fell over and, you know, broke the dog's bowl. I'm like, oh, that's
boys will be boys, as they say. Yeah.
I'm like, why? I just think it's very distasteful. Part of our, whether you're a royalist or not, part of our cultural identity, whether you like it or not, is our royal family. You don't have to be a royalist to understand that that is part of who we are as Britons. We have a constitutional monarchy that used to be a ruler of an empire where, you know, people fought and killed each other to be king or queen. It's not like the prettiest history of how people got to be in power of that, but it is part of our history. And to just dismiss people and say, oh, it's just the monarchy, we don't need the monarchy, like, then what would we be? Who would we be? Because we don't really have any other cultural identity. I
mean, it's like, if you get rid of it, what's the necessity to get rid of it? Because with the French Revolution done, we survived that one. With the Russian Revolution 100 years ago, it's like, whoa, getting windy. Is it going to happen here? And it didn't happen. And at the same time as the Russian one, they had a similar sort of thing in Turkey at the end of the First World War, where they got rid of the old system there of the Ottoman sultans, because of the chaos of the First World War. And in came Ataturk, who's a hero of mine, political hero, and he sort of turned Turkey into a secular republic. And so it was the first country in Europe to give kind of women women their rights and their votes. The first country that was Turkey, apart from New Zealand. So it's like they were properly revolutionary back then in this anti-monarchical sense. But the fact is, the family went around the country into hiding, basically, with lots of money, but being quiet. They're still there now, and they're kind of, the grandchildren and all that are coming back to say, well, what's happened to us? What are we? And there's a lot of support in that country for, like, bring back that spirit again, that spirit of hierarchy and connection to history, which kind of the secularism was very popular in Turkey, but culturally it's much more ambiguous because it's a Muslim country, a very strongly Muslim country, and with so it has a lot of issues about the fact that the state rejects that, and they've always got a big tension about it. And we don't have that same kind of vibe going on in Britain, but we do have this bizarre multicultural, not quite knowing what we are, no constitution thing, which, as I've said before, gets on by not going on about it. And we're being told that we're not allowed to do that anymore by the cultural theorists, and that's where the war is. Yes, we are allowed to be as subtle as we like.
Yeah, because most people just want to crack on, and I think a lot of the people that subscribe live in a London bubble. I can't remember who it was, with some Indian fella. I can't remember his name. It was on who had gone somewhere outside of London, and he said he was surprised how nice white people were. I'm like, well,
yeah.
If you spend your life in London, you're not really getting a great perspective of the UK.
No,
it's tourists, it's fast moving, people change around all the time. It's not indicative of, like, where I am, you know, a little village in Yorkshire. It's like, you know, some of my neighbours have lived here for 50 years. It's not a it's just
we love that kind of thing, you know. It's so special. And this thing with it kind of the integration is a massive ongoing problem. And the fact is, I can't think of anything in history where it's very sad to say it, but I can't think of anything in history where integration has gone well in the way that they're all kind of imagining it to be, to become this happily intermingling thing where you know, because people tend to go with the habits and behaviors of the other. And it's not about skin color, because you, to me, to Megan, to David Lammy, let's put us all there in a little four, and just to visualize that, you know, we're all utterly different skin colors. I'm more pink than you are, you know, blah 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 blah, etc. It's not about that. It's about the behaviors, and the behaviors of those two are so not comfortable on this ground for the multitude of reasons, and you have to look at those behaviors and the whys to go to the positive in it. And God knows where that positivity is, and everything ends up in the ghetto. We're all ghettoized, and the white people in the big cities are now becoming ghettoized, which is going to be an enormous problem going forward.
So,
it's not me being racist, that's me being observational, by the way.
We're out of time again, so
okay.
We say goodbye and thank you for listening.
We're going to talk about a justice system next week. Is that a part of the plan? Should we do that?
Crime and justice. What should be
okay.
crime, and what's the right kind of justice?
Lovely. My job.
Yeah.
Part of my job.
Yeah. So thank you, and I'll see you next week.
Fantastic. Ciao.
Please like, follow, share, subscribe, all the rest of the YouTubey things. Do take care. Hope to speak to you again soon.